Hello, everyone. Welcome to Clarity 15.9.2 Supportability Training. In this section, we will review the new Clarity Connections, which is a new set of out-of-the-box configurable capabilities to integrate Clarity and Rally. You'll see the beta tag used throughout the presentation and in the product itself. So we're going to have that for some time until we're comfortable with its capabilities. And during that period, we're definitely going to be wanting feedback from customers. Okay, the new Clarity Connection solution is in beta, and we'll be very interested in your feedback as you begin to use the new capabilities. Essentially, the goal of this new solution is to tie Clarity and Rally together. You can start with your Clarity business outcomes, import them into a roadmap. This integration can use the business outcomes from an approved roadmap scenario to create portfolio items in Rally. And then based on both the initial estimates and those items as well on the delivery status, that information can be sent back to the business outcome to review for monitoring. So this integration allows you to tie business decisions and their prioritization with delivery or execution information. Oops, slide here. So this is how we visualize the relationship between the two solutions. We're going to continue to evolve this over time as people tell us what other information they'd like to see go through this round trip. But one of the key challenges people told us about this process is they want this to be configurable, because customers may not know all the fields they want to use when they begin to integrate the systems, or we don't have visibility into the objects or fields that you want to use when integrating these systems. So with that in mind, Clarity Connection starts with mapping objects. The solution provides the ability to map Clarity and Rally objects, name them whatever's appropriate for your business needs. As you know, Clarity objects can take on names such as strategic theme, business epic, or business outcome. And of course, Rally supports the ability to configure the portfolio item hierarchy levels and name those objects to meet business needs as well. So you can see the names don't have to be the same. The object mapping easily connects Clarity with Rally. You can decide to push from Clarity to Rally or pull from Rally to Clarity. Essentially, map investments the way you want, with added support for out-of-the-box and custom Rally objects. You can also easily map fields. I didn't realize this was a build. You can easily map fields between Rally and Clarity. For example, if you're mapping business epic on the Clarity side to epic on the Rally side, you can map name, description, and start date and have that go to Rally. And then you can have %complete come back to Clarity. You can also configure who owns the data. If Clarity does, use the Clarity to Rally sync direction. If Rally owns it, use the Rally to Clarity sync direction. You can also configure when the sync occurs. You control how the integration syncs Clarity and Rally as well. So from a create standpoint, the sync direction will create new Rally portfolio items. Clarity to Rally is the only direction supported in this release. If no Rally object exists, the sync job will create a new Rally object to populate the map fields. So this is a beta version, and we're working on supporting the Rally to Clarity direction in a future, create function in a future release. From an update perspective, this is a valid sync direction for either Clarity to Rally or Rally to Clarity. The key thing here is that system will sync data for mapped objects and fields if there are data changes detected in either source system. So this is an idea that was implemented. Basically, it helps with performance. If we're looking for changes, then we'll only bring those changes over. So be aware of that. From a create and update perspective, the sync direction creates new Rally portfolio items and then perform the update very much alike like it does in the create function. The Clarity to Rally is the only direction supported in this release. And then the system syncs data for mapped objects on creation and subsequent updates. Now I'll show you all this. As with the create flow, if no rally object exists, the sync job will create a new rally object and populate the mapped fields. Okay, so why is this important? So this is a no code required, configurable integration for Clarity and Rally. It eliminates customer regression testing and very expensive third-party connectors. This is a compelling competitive differentiator, one solution offering, and lastly, out-of-the-box integration supported by engineering with each release. Um, so the following represents the workflow associated with the new Clarity and Rally integration. We'll spend just a second on here, going kind of from top to bottom, left to right. I've mapped this out as kind of a 7-step flow, and I'm going to walk through each of these steps afterwards, after this slide, because this is obviously a totally new integration paradigm. I want everybody to catch what it is. So first, this integration depends on the classic integration object to be in place with a valid Rally endpoint and API key. Secondly, users need to have the proper permissions to access the new integration mapping area. We'll talk about that a little bit more to get into the modern UX area. Once you're in your configuration, you work on configuring an integration mapping, essentially linking the clarity to the integration object, linking your integration mapping to the integration object is what I meant to say. After that, you need to run what's called the import integration mapping job. And I have many more details about these jobs and what about this process in a second. But I just want to say that after you create that initial relationship between your integration mapping and the integration object, you need to run a job to go prefetch all the Rally objects and fields and populate that in Clarity. That information that you just brought over is then used to map the objects and Rally objects and fields with Clarity without any network delay. All the information is right there in front of you. Then after you do that, you need to go populate one of the settings on your investments. Basically, you need to link your investments to that integration mapping so that when finally you run the sync job, that information that's mapped, everything is updated and brought over to the staging tables and brought into Clarity and or pushed to Rally. So just keep this as a reference of the workflow, the system flow, and then let's walk through each one of these steps. Okay, the integration, just like the current Agile integration, this new integration requires an integration object instance to be in place to take advantage of this integration. No change in functionality related to the integration object based on this new feature here. Actually having this infrastructure in place streamline that part of the development of the new integration. There are some required attributes that are needed to support this Clarity connections in terms of the integration URL, the integration instance, and the API key. Note the referrer URL is used if the timesheet integration is in use, but it's not necessarily needed for what we're going to be walking through here in a second. So there is a new area. There's an integration tiles behind the Modern UX administration area, and there is a new navigation right. It's called integration mapping navigate. So just any user granted that right will be available to get to that new tile. Any resource added to the PMO sysadmin group will be granted the integration mapping navigate right as well. So one step there from a security standpoint. The integration mapping grid is used to link a defined Rally integration object to a specific object and field mapping instance. So we've we've clicked on the integration tile, and this is our first landing point. And this is basically what you're doing is defining a name of a mapping that you're going to run through and link it to the integration object that was created in Classic. And that's the starting point. We call that an integration mapping. You just kind of name it what you want. And this is built on the Common Grid tool set. I like to bring in the URL, that's the Clarity URL, just as a reference. It's not required. So, so immediately following this step, there's a need to run what's called the import integration mapping job. And what that does, it goes out and fetches and populates the Rally objects and fields within Clarity. Each time that job is run, the Rally objects that are brought over are updated. Even if you have run this job once before and you create some custom attributes, this job on the Clarity side, this job still needs to be run. So here's this is the job that gets run, number 4 there. It basically, Clarity Connections includes 3 new jobs. I've just described the item tagged as number 4. So from a user workflow perspective, after creating that integration mapping, the import integration mapping job is run to populate the mapping screens. As I mentioned, that job goes out and prefetches the Rally object and fields and populates what we refer to as the Rally objects tables, and I'll show that in a minute. And that collection of tables feeds the mapping screens. Since we're talking about the jobs, there's 2 other jobs, but one of them automatically runs after the first one is completed. I'll come back and talk about job 2 and 3 that are on the list here as we get through the mapping exercise. Okay, so when that import mapping or import integration mapping job is run, Clarity includes a table structure to store that information, the objects and their stock and custom fields. It's called, surprisingly enough, Rally objects. This read-only information helps the user map Clarity to Rally objects and their associated stock and custom fields without network or connection displays and delays. In other words, when I get into the mapping section, the drop downs are pulling from this area, so it's not having to go across the wire and come and get the data. Okay. The data type compatibility grid. This is a read-only reference table to help users understand the supported data types between Clarity and Rally and their respective sync direction. Both indicates that either system can serve as a source. Clarity Rally indicates that Clarity is the source, and Rally to Clarity, there's 2 of them there, indicates that Rally is the source. This is a beta release, so there are some limitations with respect to Clarity and Rally data type support, but we're working in this area on the next release, and so I have some more information on that later in the deck. So once you've created that integration mapping, you've run the import map information job. Now you're ready to start doing the mapping. And like I said, we start with the objects. So here's an example of you simply supply a name, and then you start mapping Rally and Clarity objects and pick a direction. This integration supports the project, idea, and custom investment objects. This integration supports a customer's Rally portfolio item hierarchy, whatever it may be. However, as you probably know, Rally's out-of-the-box hierarchy follows SAFE, and the structure is strategic theme to epic to capability and features. Now, this is the item hierarchy, meaning we don't have stories and tasks in here. Those are work items. So this is a portfolio item. So at this object level, there's a single sync direction, clarity to rally. So those are the things that are done here. You're just aligning your clarity objects. In many cases, it's going to be a custom investment. So strategic theme, business outcome, epic, and you're going to be syncing those with the rally objects, which represent the portfolio item hierarchy names. Okay, so you do the object mapping, and now you step into map clarity and rally fields, and define which system will be considered the system of record in terms of syncing direction, clarity to rally or rally to clarity. So when using the direction clarity to rally, the system will create new objects. Well, let's call it an epic, and populate their corresponding fields, the name, description, start date as an example, in Rally. So the object didn't exist, or the instance of that epic did not exist in Rally. Clarity will create it. When using the direction Rally to Clarity, you can bring back execution information such as percent done by story point, count, or state as a couple of examples. Okay, so before we've done the mapping, we've figured out what fields are going to be syncing, what objects are we syncing, what fields are we syncing, what direction are we syncing. I think I should go back and talk about the sync options that are here. We talked about that earlier. There's the create. So if it's going to clarity to rally on the sync, if that item doesn't exist in rally, it will create it. Update is it's going back and forth, whoever the source is, depending on the direction you're choosing. And then on clarity, the create and update means, hey, if it doesn't exist, create it. If it's already there, then just do the updates if there's a change on the clarity side. Okay, so once you've done all the mapping, the final step before you have to run the job is to basically link your investments to that integration mapping. So within I'm an example here, I'm on strategies, the custom investments. I'm going to go link these to that integration mapping so the system knows to go share these, or sync these particular items between Clarity and Rally. So in this example, the mapped objects are strategies. The integration mapping attribute has been, this integration mapping attribute that you see in the grid, that's been added to the PMO accelerator. So on upgrade, this new attribute is added to the investment object. So once you're in the investment pages, whether you're in a custom investment, a project, or an idea, that attribute becomes available and just use it in the grid like any other. And in the case of using this integration, you bring it into the grid and select the appropriate integration mapping. So now we've gone through, we've done all the object and field mapping. We've told our system here which investments, which strategies in this case are going to be linked to Rally. So at this point, we go ahead and run the job. You run the sync job, and it's going to go off and do its create or update or what have you. And then the second half of that is it's going to populate what we refer to as a staging table. So the staging table, from an infrastructure perspective, includes an area to capture the Rally data before processing and populating the mapped objects and stock custom fields. Now, this release doesn't have it, but this is basically setting the framework for pre-processing the data while it's in the staging table before it goes into Clarity. But for now, that capability is not there just yet. But this information does provide that administrative user of the inner workings and transparency of the integration. Administrative users have the needed information that provides a sense of trust in the system and visibility into the sync job or status. It's no longer suppressed in a log file, but readily available from the user experience. Each job run, like the sync job, each time it's run, these staging tables are cleared out. So in this release, the staging table supports inbound Rally information In the next release, we're targeting to enable outbound clarity information to move through the staging tables. And as I mentioned, this sets us up for the future support of pre-processing the data before the data moves into or out into clarity or out of clarity or into clarity. All right, so we've run the sync job. The staging tables have populated, and it's exciting to see this page light up with incoming rally execution information. In this example, Agile stage and percent complete are custom attributes that are mapped to rally equivalents. So the staging table ultimately populated these mapped clarity objects and fields with that inbound rally data. You'll see on the right, the rally object field is automatically populated following a successful sync. So that's telling us what rally object is linked to one of these strategies, two of these strategies. So again, this rally object attribute has been added to the PMO accelerator as well. Same thing, upon upgrade, it's added to the investment object, and then it's available in the column panel, just like any other attribute. So that is the flow in slideware. Let's take a look at this in action. In the demo here, you're going to understand if a user has the proper access rights to configure the integration. We're going to review an integration object creation, the integration mapping. We'll run the import mapping job to go prefetch the information from Rally. We will go through the object and field mapping configuration. We're going to populate that integration mapping lookup, on a strategies page, for example. And then we're going to run the job, and we'll review the impacted clarity and rally streams. Okay, so let me come out of PowerPoint, and we'll get into the demonstration. Let's see where I am. Okay, I'll just start here from the project tile, but in keeping with our flow that I walked through, I'll start with a really brief overview of the integration object for those that are new to the conversation. I'm going to go ahead and open up Classic. I'm going to go to Administration and Integrations. I can see, one entry here. So here's my integration object. I'll just open that up. So the functionality of this integration hasn't changed in this release. The integration instance is the Rally workspace to which this my Clarity environment is integrated. I see it's got a valid API key, so we're ready to move on. But before we do, I'll show you that the existing Agile integration, the project to portfolio piece is here. We've also got, it's telling us more about the create direction, the initiative, time entry is enabled. So all these things are here. The main point of walking through those two tabs was just to reaffirm or confirm that the existing integration that's in place can coexist with I'll call it the Clarity Connections integration. The Clarity Connections integration does not require these other two tabs. And I can't remember, but it may not even show up if a certain flag is set. So let's go back, and I'll come back to the modern UX here. And I'll go to the administration area. And in fact, there is a new integration tile here. So Ian, as the user, certainly has the correct access to get in here. This is the only access right that needs to be granted. What I want to do first is kind of go back and just show you real quick the access right. I'll go into Classic Resources. I'll go to Ian. I'll go to the global rights, and I'll do a little search on integration. And there he is. This is the right. Integration mapping navigate right. This needs to be assigned to the users that are going to go in and configure this workspace and interact with it. Okay, so I'm going to click on the top. I'm going to come back to the Modern UX, and I am going to go into the system here. So I land on integration mappings. This is essentially the area where you're going to link your mapping to that integration object that we just looked at in Classic. So I see one here already. We'll come back to that in a second. I just click the Add button, and I'm going to type in a new Clarity, if I spell it right, just to differentiate it. And I select the integration object, Rally, and I'm good. Now, I like keeping the URL here. It's the Clarity URL. See, it's Clarity Rocks. You can see up here Clarity Rocks. So the system knows how to go grab. I don't have to go get that. You know, there's a number of attributes I can put here if we're interested in. But this is essentially the key piece of information that you need when you're creating the integration mapping. Oh, by the way, this is a studio object, so additional attributes can be added if warranted. So now, I've defined the integration mapping, right? That's at the very high level. So the next step is to start mapping Clarity and Rally objects and fields. However, before that mapping step can start, the Rally objects and fields must be imported into Clarity. I may have done it for other integration mappings, but if you create a new integration mapping, you need to do that import again. So for each integration mapping, you got to bring in those things. It's not a big deal. It's just a step to be aware of. So if this step is missed, it'll become obvious almost immediately. For example, I'm going to click into this new integration mapping we just created. I'm going to go in. I'll come back to this in a second here, but I just want to show you something. So I'm going to create a new object. I'll just name it strategy. It's whatever you want. I see my Clarity objects are here. Great. I'll pick strategies. And I'm going to look for a Rally object. There's nothing there. It's because the import job hasn't been run. So, and I can't create the record. So that's what I meant by it'll become really obvious quickly that you haven't run that extra job. Another area to evaluate is coming back to Rally objects for this integration mapping. Again, remember, this is the area that stores all the prefetched Rally objects and fields. This is blank. So that's another indicator for this integration mapping that the job has not been run. So let's see. This is what I meant. So what I'm going to do for this particular instance is I'm going to run the integration mapping job. It only takes a second. It's really fast. So I go to Home, Jobs. Where's my thing? Jobs, job type, and import. That's my key search. Filter. There's my import integration mapping. The job is here. One thing I do have to do is pick the name of the integration mapping. I think there's two of them, right? There was one that was existing, and then this is the one we just created, Clarity Integration. And then and again, it's like any other job, I can schedule this, whatever. So all the job features that you see here are exactly the same as before. Now, the log, right, that allows me to go see, did this thing execute? So it looks like it's processing, and obviously I need to refresh it to tell me it's done. You guys know, most of you know how this behaves. I'm just showing it to be obvious. I'm going to come back, now that it's done, I'm going to come back into Clarity. I'm going to go into this integration mapping that we just created. I'm going to go to the Rally objects, and voila, there they are. Now this is a common grid utility here. I'll click on Theme to highlight a row, and over here in the configurable flyout panel is the corresponding attributes or fields that are associated with that theme and all their data types. So this becomes another reference tool for the users to figure out, okay, what fields are here, what data types are they, etc. And I have my column panel here and all kinds of things to get more information I need it. But this is mainly a reference tool from a user perspective. The system uses it to serve up what we're about to do in just a minute and do the mapping. Okay, so we'll come back out to the integration mapping area. And I'm going to come into Clarity to Rally because this has a full complement of objects that are mapped. Real quick, you can see, this I've named it strategy. It's got the clarity objects, clarity objects, rally objects available here. And then as I highlight the row, I get my right-hand panel that shows the field mappings. So now we're kind of into the meat of it here. This is all based on Common Grid. I'm going to hit expand just so we can look at it. So I'll just kind of give you the layout of the land here. It's got the direction. So which way do I want to go? Who's the source, right? Clarity to Rally is most of these, and Rally to Clarity is looking for certain execution information on the return based on progress, as they're executing against the particular features. So I've basically done all the mapping of the fields here. I've decided, what do I want to do as far as create an update or update and only create in certain cases. And so those are the four columns that need to be chosen by the user. The data types get filled in once you make those selections. Okay, so with the field mapping in place, let's take a step back and review this data type compatibility, right? How do I know that I'm setting up, a string to string or a number to a decimal? How do I know I'm doing that correctly? So in this release, just to keep you aware, there is no logic in the pull downs, to parameterize lookups to, if I pick string, that only show me, if I pick a name field and it happens to be a string, only show me string fields over here on the Rally side. We elected to postpone that. We're in beta. We'll take some feedback to tell us if that's necessarily mandatory. So I wanted to come back to the data type compatibility. This is kind of a global situation right now. This is a read-only grid as well. It's a reference tool of, of what what directions are supported and what data types are supported for each of those directions. Okay, just keep that in mind. All right, so like I mentioned, there's some limitations here as far as different supported data types between the two systems. We're in beta, we recognize that. We're actually working in this area for the next release. Okay, so now with the mapping done, I've kind of showed you a couple reference tables. Let's go make sure that our investments are synchronized or actually are linked to that mapping that we just created. So I'm going to go to strategies. It's my area of interest. So here I am. I'm on strategies. I can already see that there's some activity going on. You can see this rally object gets populated right after the sync job is run. So these guys are already linked. They're already hooked up to because of the integration mapping selection. I've got back some real-time execution information from the system, right? Somebody on the rally side completed the agile state. So now we have visibility of that from the business side. And we're getting some feeders on % complete of the work that's been underway. So the last step for this guy is to simplify operations and execution is to synchronize this with the integration mapping that we created and that was fully mapped out. So that's the extent of configuration that needs to be done on this page. So this is going to be a quiz for you. Take a visual of and pay attention to, hey, this field's empty. there's some percent complete information. And so, we're going to monitor the changes as the sync job runs or when it completes. So before running that sync job, let's take a look at the mapped Rally portfolio items in Rally. And I hope my session didn't time out. Okay, here it is. So you can see there's 4 themes here. If you remember on the previous Clarity page, 4 of them were in fact already linked to a Rally object, and that unique object ID is a result of these 4 being populated. You can see the state that is here, and we've got some status information, and this looks a little bit different than what we have in Clarity. I expect the sync job to update the information that's current in Rally and bring that back to Clarity. And I also expect a 5th theme to be created. You'll see there's only 4 here. So I have a note on my side of what those percentages look like, so I can help you out in case you forgot. So let's go back to to Clarity. We're going to go into the job area. It was already there probably. And we are going to run the sync job. Filter. Sync mapped information. And again, we got to hook it up to the proper integration mapping. Clarity to Rally. Remember that Clarity integration one is the one we created. We didn't really build it out, but nevertheless, it's here. So Clarity to Rally is where we go. And we're just going to run it right now. Again, this can be scheduled. It doesn't, this is just a cooking show right now. So I'm going to go over to my log. This is an area that you should be, interested in if there's any kind of troubleshooting that needs to take place. I can see the synchronized mapping is completed. Now, the second job is to now bring data back from Rally and populate those staging tables and then bring that into the system. So I'll just refresh here, and I'm expecting a second job to pop up here on the top of the page called Import Staging Tables that's completed. All right, so that job ran by itself. I didn't have to do anything. So now we are this is a moment of truth, right? I'm going to come back into, first, I'm going to come back into the integration area and look at the staging tables for this integration. So I'll go to the staging tables. Today is May 12th. I can see some information came back. I see some percent done information coming back. This column panel gets populated with any unique information that it's part of the sync job. So it may change periodically as you come back to the staging table. It's not always going to have the same columns. But the good news is I've got my things here that have processed, and we'll come back now and go to the investment page. So we've kind of refreshed the page here. And voila. First thing I notice is this last one, simplified operations execution. It now has a Rally object. That means it is now linked. So any updates can occur now. Now, percent complete did not come over. It's blank because we just sent it. There is no updates to gather. The teams haven't probably built out the relative initiatives and features yet. So that's why that's blank. And conversely, the Agile state is blank because we just sent it over. However, I do see some updates here in the percent complete, which is very encouraging. Before we sent this over, the achieved sustainable growth was at 63, so there wasn't any change there. These 2 middle guys were at 0% prior to the synchronization. So we got back new information here, 117. And this particular guy didn't change either. It was 32%. And so that was what I had expected. I expected these middle 2 to update. I expected this to be populated here in the Rally object, and I expected Agile state to be blank because we just pushed it over.